So the new moon, this is the dark moon, is in Uttara Ashadha. So I'll spell it for you if you want to write it down. Again, it's not important that you like memorize these things or know these things unless you want to. But this is 1/27th of the sky. It's a nakshatra. So Uttara is Uttara. And then the second word is Ashadha. 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 So Uttara means that it's part of a pair. So there's Purva Ashadha and there's Uttara Ashadha. So there's a couple, we talked about this a couple months ago with another pairing, Uttara Falguni, I think we talked about. So that just means that this nakshatra comes in a pair. Okay, so I'm going to be talking, Uttara is the second of the pair. It's the constellation that comes after. And it means, the meaning behind it, like if Ardra was, the moist one, or the symbol was the teardrop, here, this means invincibility, not invisibility, invincibility. And the symbol is the elephant tusk. The elephant, across lots of different traditions, and especially ours within yoga, is a symbol of wisdom. It's a symbol of, like Ganesha is the elephant-headed deity, the elephant-headed archetype. And Ganesha actually breaks off his own tusk just in an effort to show that it's the destruction of the ego. Understanding that everything that comes is designed to go, and everything that goes is designed to come. So when I said we needed to keep in mind the bigger picture through the full moon and Ardra, here's where the cosmic timing is really setting us up for success. We have to keep that big picture mentality. I was reading something, I can't remember what, but it was about how astronauts, when they come back from space, they have this like wildly expansive experience of the universe. Like they're newly philosophical or whatever. It's the idea of like being in space and actually looking at the earth, not like Wiseman, Alaska, or, the Swiss Alps, or, Beijing, China, right? It's not like these specific places or wherever you are right now. It's looking at the whole planet, this tiny blue dot in the middle of like this expansive universe, right? So we have to remember, even though we are this human in this life with a job, with a family, with whatever it is, however we spend our time, right? You have, good habits, you have some bad habits, you have goals, you have, successes and failures, and you have an ego, and you are also part of this collective consciousness. All of us together are on the planet at the same time right now. And we all have a limited amount of time. We're all going to die. We're all dying right now, right? And so keeping that in the back of your mind as you're working toward your goals. So the deity or archetype of Uttara Ashadha is called the Vishwadeva or Vishwadevas. So Vishva, or we say Vishwa, we pronounce it Deva, Deva. Basically what it means is like all the devas. So in some of the ancient texts, Vishwadeva or the Vishwadevas are like collectively referenced as like all the supernatural powers, right? So when we talk about like a god or a goddess, they have certain powers. It's basically the way in these stories that in India and in all cultures, by the way, we take this concept of the universe, of infinity, and we break it down into little pieces, right? But if we were to take all the powers in the universe and combine them, that would be the Vishwadevas. And so when we bring this into, so there's not like necessarily an origin story for the Vishwadevas because it's like, it's all the gods. But when we talk about them in this way, one of their symbols is, or one of their abilities is to pull together resources for a common purpose. So Uttara Ashadha is a really victorious nakshatra. It's all about victory. So victory, when we think of it at first glance, right? If you're going into a battle and you're on one side, you think of victory as winning. This is a lower-minded way of approaching it, right? You say, I'm going to win, and you have an idea of what that looks like, right? That's how we approach a lot of things. I'm going to be successful, and that looks like me having this life with this car, with this picket fence, with this whatever, you have an idea. But through yoga, what we realize is that we can't lose as long as we start to let go of expectations. So I'll give you an example. One of the things, and I plan this without researching the cosmic timing. I'm traveling around this month. Part of the work that I do is with Riding on Insulin. So it's a nonprofit Sean and I started many years ago, 16 years ago. And we do ski and snowboard camps for kids with type 1 diabetes. And I'm actually, the way it worked out this year is I'm going to be on the road for 5 weeks. And I normally come back to Alaska in between there. But this year I've just said, you know what, I'm going to travel. And I thought, well, I'd really like to teach some yoga while I'm traveling. So I was like, well, I'll do a tour, right? I think I had T Swift on my mind. Not that I'm doing a tour, but I'm really inspired by her. So I was like, okay, I'll just teach yoga a few times. And really I had an idea of what that might look like. But any of you who have gone out and pitched a workshop to a stranger who owns a yoga studio a world away from you, anyone who knows that feeling knows that it's very humbling. I think I know a lot about owning a studio because I used to own yoga studios. And every time I would pitch my workshops and my classes, it just blew my mind because every situation was so different. Some people were like, yes, immediately, right? Like some people were warmer to me if I had an introduction. I had to really think about, like, who do I know in these places? Who can I call on for a referral, like that could introduce me? And so I really felt like taking all of these resources, I pulled out every single thought that I could from my meditations or my journaling. And I was like, why not? And honestly, I have this whole thing planned out. Like I start next week and I am totally unattached for how it goes. Right? I feel like I'm going out into the wilderness and I have a plan, but we'll just see how it goes. And I feel that every year with Riding on Insulin anyway, because I'm going to be running these camps for kids on the weekends and then teaching yoga during the week. And it's going to be what it's going to be. And so giving another thing that you can take away from this new moon is Uttara Ashadha is all about when we give 110%. When we really show up. And so because the new moon is in this place, you can kind of take some of that energy, like, okay, I'm going to pull in all my supernatural powers. You can think of like prana shakti, like we did in class today, right? That's like pulling in. Shakti means power. Prana means vitality. So pulling in whatever power we need and feeling that we're going to do with it what needs to be done. Right? Giving 110%. And also, so in the stories of the Vishwadevas, so again, that's the archetype of Uttara Ashadha. In the story of the Vishwadevas, it's often talked about, like you've heard me in previous months talked about the ocean of milk. This is like one of the stories from our tradition. So the idea is that there's this ocean of milk, and at the bottom of the ocean is soma, or nectar. And the idea is that the gods and the demons, or also called asuras, the gods and the demons both want the nectar, because the nectar is the nectar of immortality. Right? Of course, we want this. So the gods, they take it upon themselves, the Vishwadevas, they take it upon themselves to conceal the nectar from the demons. And how do they do that? They build it. They build the codes to finding the nectar into the rituals. So in a lot of spiritual texts, like especially the really old ones like the Vedas, there's a lot of ritual. And by ritual, I mean, we could talk like very specific prescription for like, first you do this, then you honor this God specifically with this offering and this, right? So if you, like me, don't live in an area where there is a lot of ritual. Maybe you do. And honestly, like you can even look at the rituals in your workplace. You can look at the rituals if you go to church or you go to temple, right? Look at the rituals that are being done for very specific purposes. If we are devoted to the rituals of our life, then we get the nectar of immortality. We do not go out looking for it like a hero on a quest, like I'm going to find this nectar in a little pot behind this tree, right? If we're just looking for the nectar because we want to be immortal, we will not find it. Because we understand through the teachings that the search itself, right, the ritual of going out into the world and committing to our practices and committing to whatever this spiritual path is that you're on, that's how the nectar comes to us. It meets us here. That's like the super cool part about it. And so the devas, the Vishwa devas, they know this. And so they build the code for how to access the nectar into the rituals. And that's why the demons don't get the nectar, because they're all about being invincible. I want to just be invincible. That's what I'm here for. I want to live forever. But in yoga, this is why we can get really committed to what our rituals are. Okay? So we think of like this divine warrior. We're not looking for like a victory as society defines victory or wins and losses. We're looking for spiritual victory. What is that? It's inside of you. It's like, go based off how are you feeling? You know, like even for me, I've been sick the last week, and I like 4 days ago, I remember thinking like, gosh, I am like not motivated. I can't do any breath work, right? You know how that feels. I can't, do this practice or this practice because I feel like crap and I need to rest. And I got to this point where I was like, is this just my life now? Like, this is just so, it wasn't that hard, but do you know what I mean? You get caught up in yourself. And then once I came back to my practices, I did a little ritual for the new year with some of my tarot cards, and I got back to my journal, and every little ritual that I do brings me closer to myself. That's why it's important to commit to your practices. And if you don't have practices or rituals, first of all, I bet you already do. But if you don't have conscious rituals, create them. This is the month to do it. Okay? Get frustrated enough at yourself in the beginning of the month to create rituals that are going to nourish you for the rest of the year. Okay? The one thing that I'll say, so Uttara Ashadha is entirely in, the two Ashadhas are located in the arrow of Sagittarius. So Sagittarius, there's the constellations, like a guy with a bow and arrow. And so they're both located inside the arrow. And so yet again, we see this, right? Remember, Rudra fired his arrow, right? That's what he was born to do. Here, we see the arrow again. So like, let the arrow be our symbol this month. And the arrow is pointed well above the heavenly stars. That's the way the arrow of Sagittarius is pointed. And so when you're thinking about goals or where you're going, or even just this month, this week, this hour, go for those big goals and understand, right? Like that phrase, like Rome wasn't built in a day, is like coming up in my mind. But remember, and remember, we need to know this at the end of the month anyway, because there's a lot of Capricorn energy. Capricorn is not about quick fix. You're not gonna it's this idea of like going viral, the symbol of going viral. This is not the month to just say, oh, I'll just go viral. It's just all gonna happen for me overnight, right? Everybody, to quote Taylor Swift, don't hate me for all this Taylor Swift stuff. I love her. To quote her though, she says something like, everybody wishes to have what you have, but they don't wish for the journey that you had to take to get there, right? No one wants to get dragged through the mud. This is like the lotus. No one wants to well, maybe you do, but no one wants to go through the mud. We just want to be the bloomed lotus. So this month, we're going to remind ourselves what it's like to go through the mud. And that is the process. That is how we get the nectar. We don't find it. we receive it. Okay? Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it so much. So that is the energy of the new moon. And those two moons combined is what informed the practice that I taught you this month.